police dog focused on the teacher's bag, barking repeatedly. She initially dismissed it. However, the principal's examination of the bag revealed a startling discovery that shocked everyone. Here's the account of what occurred. Before we delve into today's story, please leave a comment below indicating your location. And if you enjoy remarkable police dog stories such as this one, be sure to subscribe. You won't want to miss future content. The autumn morning air felt crisp and clean. Officer Rebecca Martinez, known as Becca by her friends and colleagues, drove her patrol car into the visitor parking lot of Lincoln Elementary School. The large brick building, featuring colorful playground equipment and hand-painted murals, appeared welcoming in the early October sunlight. Beside her, Riker, her 3-year-old German Shepherd partner, remained watchful in his specially designed compartment, his dark, intelligent eyes following the children as they entered the school. "Ready for another school demonstration?" Becca asked, reaching back to scratch behind his ears. Riker's tail thumped against the seat, his posture remaining professional despite his obvious excitement. These community outreach events were his favorite assignments. He enjoyed the attention and the occasional treat sneaked to him by an admiring child. As Becca adjusted her crisp Oakland Police Department uniform in the rearview mirror, she felt a surge of pride in their 2 years together. She and Riker had established themselves as one of the department's most respected canine teams. His detection skills were exceptional, his obedience flawless, and the bond between them unwavering. These school demonstrations served a purpose beyond community relations. They offered an opportunity to inspire the next generation. Principal Harrison greeted them at the front entrance, offering a warm and welcoming handshake. Mr. Martinez arrived, stating perfect timing. "The assembly is all set up in the gymnasium." The children had been discussing it constantly all week. Becca trailed after him through hallways displaying student artwork and educational posters. Riker kept his heels perfectly aligned beside her. The gymnasium was filled with the eager conversation of elementary students seated cross-legged on the floor, their teachers positioned carefully around the edges. "Good morning, Lincoln Elementary," Principal Harrison's voice announced over the microphone. "Today we have some very special guests. Please join us in welcoming Officer Rebecca Martinez and her partner, Riker." The demonstration commenced without issue. Rebecca detailed Riker's training as he executed fundamental obedience commands, drawing expressions of admiration as he accurately retrieved objects and successfully completed a miniature obstacle course. The children watched attentively while Rebecca described how police dogs assist in locating missing individuals and identifying hazardous materials. "Could any teachers volunteer for our scent detection demonstration?" Becca inquired, presenting a training aid, a small canister containing a trace scent intended for demonstrations. Ms. Eleanor Winters, a petite woman with a neat brown bob and wire-rimmed glasses, volunteered among several others. As the respected 4th grade teacher approached, something shifted in Riker's demeanor. His ears perked up, and his body grew stiff next to Becca. Riker abruptly turned away from the training aid. His focus shifted to Ms. Winters' tote bag, located near the gymnasium wall. A low growl emanated from his throat, a sound Becca had never encountered during a school visit. "Riker, heel," Becca instructed softly. However, her partner remained focused, his growl evolving into persistent, urgent barking that reverberated through the suddenly silent gymnasium. The sudden change from a happy demonstration to Riker's forceful barking immediately created a noticeable tension throughout the gymnasium. Children who had been smiling just a few moments prior now appeared concerned, with some even moving backward on the gleaming floor. Ms. Winters paused in her step, her face losing color as Riker continued barking at her canvas tote bag. "Riker, stop," Becca stated more sternly, placing a hand on his tactical harness. The shepherd paused briefly but stayed watchful, his gaze fixed on the bag. 15 years in law enforcement, and 8 as a K-9 handler, had shown Becca how to understand her partners with remarkable precision. This wasn't enthusiasm or bewilderment, it was a practiced alert. Principal Harrison approached, his formal smile tight as he spoke to the students, who were beginning to whisper, "Perhaps we should take a brief 5-minute break? Teachers, please direct your classes back to your rooms briefly." The organized movement of 200 elementary students returning with their teachers allowed Becca a moment to consider the situation. Ms. Winters remained still, her fingers fidgeting with the silver pendant around her neck. "I am so sorry about this," the principal stated once the gym was clear, his voice quiet. "Ms. Winters is among our most valued educators, Teacher of the Year on 2 occasions. There must be some error." Becca nodded, keeping a professional demeanor as her thoughts quickly considered various explanations. Incorrect alerts sometimes occurred with all K-9 units, but Riker's performance history was almost flawless. Furthermore, she understood his alerts. This wasn't hesitation, this was certainty. "Eleanor, do you have any idea what might be causing this reaction?" Principal Harrison asked softly. Ms. Winters replied that she did not, but Becca observed her hand move as if to shield a bag. "Maybe some food would be nice? I brought banana bread for the teacher's lounge." "Food wouldn't trigger this kind of alert," Becca explained carefully. "Riker is trained for narcotics, certain medications, and explosives." The word explosives made Principal Harrison's eyes widen slightly. Ms. Winters let out a small, shaky laugh. "This is absurd. I've been teaching here for 12 years. Becca observed the subtle details most would miss. The slight tremor in Ms. Winters' right hand. She noticed the way her eyes avoided direct contact. Beads of perspiration appeared at her hairline, even though the gymnasium was cool. "Ms. Winters, with your permission, I'd like to check your bag," Becca said, keeping her voice calm and friendly. "It would resolve this quickly, and we can return to the demonstration." "I don't think that's necessary," Ms. Winters responded, taking a slight step backward. "This is embarrassing enough as it is." Principal Harrison appeared conflicted, his eyes moving between the esteemed teacher and the vigilant police dog. "Eleanor, perhaps it would be best to simply—" "Tom, this is absurd," Ms. Winters interjected, addressing the principal by his first name. "You know me." But Riker had started barking again, more urgently now, pulling a little against his harness. Something was clearly amiss, and Becca needed to discover the cause. Anxiety filled the vacant gymnasium as Becca recalled her initial day at the Oakland Police Department's K-9 Training Center. The memory remained clear. A brisk morning similar to today, with the sound of dogs barking throughout the training area, and her own apprehensive excitement as Sergeant Wilson guided her towards the kennels. Martinez was introduced to Riker, as he stopped before a kennel containing a young German shepherd with intelligent eyes and ears that appeared too large for his head. He had failed his first training program. The trainer said he was too independent, but she felt she saw potential in him. The question was, did she? She recalled kneeling before the kennel, meeting Riker's gaze as he studied her with an intensity that seemed almost human. Unlike other dogs who barked or jumped excitedly, Riker had simply watched, assessing. After she had finished speaking, "Hey there, partner," he moved toward the gate, his posture alert but calm. "Well, I'll be damned," Sergeant Wilson had muttered. First handler he hasn't growled at. Their training had been grueling. Riker's independence made him resistant to standard techniques, and Becca had endured several suggestions to request a different dog, but she'd perceived something in his stubbornness, a determination that mirrored her own. They had encouraged each other, tested each other, and ultimately established a pattern that evolved them from separate individuals into an outstanding team. Their significant moment occurred 6 months into training during a complicated search exercise. While other teams adhered to the standard procedure, Riker had abruptly changed direction, guiding Becca to a concealed training tool that had been inadvertently dropped during setup. The instructors had been astonished. The assistance wasn't included in the operation, yet Riker had identified its faint signal amidst numerous interferences. Subsequently, they had compiled a record that demonstrated their effectiveness. This included 17 successful drug seizures, 3 missing children located, and a reputation for precision that had established them as the department's preferred team for challenging investigations. Only recently, in the past month, they had exposed a complex smuggling ring at the port that had bypassed standard searches. However, there had also been resistance. Just last week, Lieutenant Garcia had questioned Becca's decision to search a home based solely on Riker's alert, suggesting she was too quick to trust the dog's instincts over human intelligence. The search had produced no results, a rare failure that still felt disappointing. Sometimes I wonder if we place too much faith in these animals, Garcia had commented afterward. They're tools, Martinez, not fortune tellers. The recollection reinforced Becca's determination as she confronted the present circumstances. Riker wasn't merely an asset, he was her colleague, and his current demeanor indicated a serious problem with Ms. Winter's bag. The recent increase in prescription drug abuse among teenagers heightened the worry. Several local high schools had documented occurrences within the past month, and stories were spreading regarding a structured distribution network. Was it possible this had extended to the elementary level? The thought caused her discomfort. Becca steadied herself, concentrating on the current situation, Riker's unwavering vigilance, and Ms. Winter's growing anxiety. Her years of training solidified into a firm conviction. This wasn't an error or chance occurrence. This was Riker acting precisely as he's been taught. Ms. Winter, Becca stated, her voice calm but resolute, I'm going to need to examine that bag. The teacher held her tote more tightly. This is entirely unwarranted and humiliating. I have personal items inside. Medication, personal items. Principal Harrison cleared his throat. Eleanor, please, let's resolve this so we can proceed with the program. The tension in the gymnasium was noticeable, thick like the air before a storm. Riker stayed focused, his training preventing him from approaching without instruction. However, his posture conveyed unwavering confidence. If your concern involves prescription medication, Becca suggested, I understand. You may present those details to Principal Harrison directly. Ms. Winters looked towards the exit doors. I would prefer that my private health details are not discussed within the school. This feels like a breach of privacy. Eleanor, Principal Harrison stated, lowering his voice to a worried tone, you have previously been willing to provide your migraine medication to the nurse. What has changed? She lowered her shoulders a little. All right. However, I prefer this handled in private, without a police dog creating a spectacle. Becca agreed. We can utilize your office, Principal Harrison. Riker will need to be there. His response initiated this. But we can be discreet. The journey to the administrative offices was quiet and strained. Riker kept his heel position perfectly beside Becca, but his focus stayed on the tote bag held tightly against Ms. Winter's side. Numerous teachers looked from their classrooms as they walked past. Upon entering the principal's office, Harrison closed the blinds and indicated the visitor chairs. Let's resolve this swiftly and professionally, he stated. Principal Harrison, please examine the bag, Becca requested, adhering to procedure by having the school administrator perform the search while she attended to Riker. Ms. Winter's hand trembled as she placed her tote on the desk, her face now pale. This was absurd, she whispered, but the protest seemed uninspired. Principal Harrison paused, then cautiously opened the bag. His expression changed from skeptical to confused to shocked as he removed items and placed them on his desk. A small plastic container that seemed to hold prescription pills, but without any pharmacy labels, 3 flash drives, a stack of papers resembling test papers marked with confidential state assessment stamps across the top, and lastly, a notebook filled with student names and what appeared to be payment amounts. Eleanor, Harrison's voice was barely audible. What is this? Ms. Winters slumped into a chair, her face hidden in her hands. It's not what it looks like, she mumbled. Harrison, his usual calm facade faltering, pointed to what appeared to be test materials that had left the secure testing room. Becca identified medication Adderall, recognizing the pills from previous cases, a prescription stimulant often abused to enhance studying and test performance. Ms. Winters looked up, tears tracing a path down her face. You don't understand the pressure, the persistent demands for higher test scores, the funding connected to performance metrics, she said. Riker, remaining alert, moved closer to the desk drawer, his attention moving away from the bag. There's more, Becca stated softly, gesturing toward the drawer, and adding, may I? Principal Harrison nodded silently, and Becca opened the drawer. Within it was another container of pills, distinct from the first. The medications were clearly labeled as prescriptions, issued to different people, none of whom were Eleanor Winters. I was simply attempting to assist them, Ms. Winters cried, referring to the struggling students, those experiencing anxiety, and those whose parents lacked the financial means. Were you distributing illegally obtained prescription medication to elementary school students? Harrison inquired, his voice devoid of emotion. It's important, just a few eighth graders, and then their older siblings at the high school requested it. Her voice faded as the full impact of her actions seemed to register. Oh, God, what have I done? Becca entered the hallway to call for assistance via radio, leaving Principal Harrison to observe Ms. Winters. The usual, somewhat disorderly atmosphere of the school day persisted around them, students and teachers oblivious to the events unfolding in the principal's office. Upon her return, Ms. Winters appeared calmer, although her hands still shook as she held a tissue. Lieutenant Wilson and other officers were en route, Becca stated. Ms. Winters, I'd like to examine your classroom, Harrison said, his expression still showing the impact of a trusted colleague's actions. According to our findings, Becca responded, observing Ms. Winters visibly withdrawing into her seat. Riker is still suggesting the possibility of more. 20 minutes elapsed before Lieutenant Wilson arrived, accompanied by 2 other officers. The school's hallways were swiftly evacuated, and a focus team proceeded to Ms. Winters' 4th grade classroom. The vibrant reading nook and inspirational posters created a striking contrast to the seriousness of the circumstances. Riker proceeded deliberately, moving around the room with a familiar expertise. Upon reaching the teacher's desk, he alerted once more, nudging at a lower drawer resembling a typical file cabinet. There is nothing further, Ms. Winters stated softly from the doorway, accompanied by an officer. Everything was contained within my bag. Becca inspected the drawer, observing an unusual characteristic regarding its size. This drawer is less deep than expected, she remarked. Her fingers discovered a concealed catch, which, when released, exposed a hidden compartment. The interior revealed further test materials, a small digital scale, multiple notebooks containing ledger entries, and a stack of cash carefully banded. Lieutenant Wilson softly whistled. This is a rather complex operation for a 4th grade teacher. Becca understood, leafing through one of the notebooks. The entries spanned 3 years and included various handwritings. There were also coded references to other schools in the district. The available information revealed a troubling scenario. A group involving educators and potentially administrators appeared to be altering test results throughout the district. At the same time, they were running a prescription drug operation. Medications were being given to students with assurances of improved focus and exam results, fostering a pattern of reliance and academic misconduct. Faced with further proof, Ms. Winters became overwhelmed. It began modestly, she wept, initially assisting a small number of students with early versions of study resources. Subsequently, Peterson at Northwood High suggested the use of Adderall, claiming his students showed a 40% improvement with pharmaceutical aid. The school district continually increased the performance benchmarks, warning that schools failing to meet the standards would be closed. Where are you obtaining the prescription medications? Lieutenant Wilson inquired. Crowley and the science department have access to the medical supply room, she replied. Andrews, working within the administration, made changes to the inventory records, she confided. Please recognize we were in a dire situation. The system requires unrealistic outcomes. And when schools underperform, teachers face job losses. Communities are negatively impacted. So you resorted to supplying drugs to children? Becca questioned, disbelief evident in her voice. Ms. Winters remained silent, her response only tears. As officers continued to document the evidence, Becca watched Ms. Winters through the conference room window. The teacher, formerly held in high regard, now sat slumped at the table, responding to Lieutenant Wilson's questions amidst tears. The woman's decline was remarkable in its speed, shifting from a valued educator to someone accused of a crime within a few hours. Becca's thoughts turned to Ms. Winters' personnel file, which Principal Harrison had provided while they waited for the search warrant. Eleanor Winters, 43, had grown up in Oakland's struggling East Side. Despite significant challenges, she obtained a teaching degree and returned to serve her community. Her initial performance reviews were filled with commendations for her commitment to students facing adversity. What became of the hopeful young teacher? The narrative unfolded gradually through Ms. Winters' confession. 5 years ago, the school district introduced new standardized testing requirements directly linked to school funding. Lincoln Elementary, serving a predominantly working-class neighborhood, had faced challenges in meeting increasingly demanding metrics. "You can't fully grasp what it's like," Ms. Winters had explained, her voice filled with a sense of exhaustion. "We are evaluated solely on test scores, without consideration for whether children are genuinely learning or developing." Last year, the school received notification that if scores didn't improve by 15%, the school would be closed and students would be reassigned to Central Heights. Central Heights Elementary, situated across the highway in a more affluent area, required an hour-long bus ride for many Lincoln students. The closure would have been devastating for working parents who depended on after-school programs and local support networks. "Initially, we implemented after-school sessions," she explained, supplemented with extra worksheets and practice tests. "However, our students were already facing significant challenges, many coming from homes where parents held multiple jobs, where English wasn't the primary language, and where basic needs weren't consistently met. The situation intensified as initial scores indicated only slight progress." It was then that Alan Peterson, a high school teacher encountering comparable difficulties, contacted her with a proposition: advance copies of test materials in exchange for guaranteed results. The scheme had developed over time. What started as sharing test preparation materials progressed to providing actual test questions. When that approach wasn't enough, Peterson proposed using pharmaceutical aids, such as Adderall and similar stimulants, to assist students in concentrating during exams. Initially, scores increased by 22%, Ms. Winters had confessed. "The district lauded us as an example of educational reform. Parents felt reassured that their children would not be transported across town. Teachers retained their positions." What Ms. Winters had not foreseen was the rapid escalation of the program beyond her ability to manage. Several other schools experiencing difficulties sought similar assistance. Students started asking for medication to be used outside of testing situations. This created a complex underground market disguised as a commitment to high academic standards. "I simply wanted to aid my students," she murmured. "I didn't intend for this to happen." Becca reflected, observing the distressed teacher. The road to misfortune is often paved with good intentions. By evening, Lincoln Elementary was engulfed in intense media coverage. News vans filled the street as reporters shared rapid updates concerning the teacher who had become a drug dealer. Parents assembled outside Northwood High School in worried groups, looking at their phones and quietly discussing the situation. The emergency school board meeting, quickly arranged in the district auditorium, was full of worried families. Superintendent Wallace stood at the podium, his usual confident appearance replaced by a serious expression. "We understand your concerns and share your shock," he began, addressing the restless crowd. "The actions of Ms. Winters and potentially others represent a profound betrayal of trust, but I want to assure you that we are cooperating fully with law enforcement and taking immediate steps to address the situation." These steps had already begun. Peterson from the high school and 3 other educators implicated in Ms. Winters' confession have been placed on administrative leave pending investigation. A comprehensive review of the district's standardized testing protocols was in progress. Grief counselors would be accessible to students at all impacted schools beginning tomorrow. The recent disclosures were particularly distressing for the families of Lincoln Elementary. Many had placed considerable faith in Ms. Winters over the years, recognizing her as a committed educator advocating for a school facing challenges. "My daughter adored Ms. Winters," Maria Gonzalez shared with a local reporter, her voice filled with emotion. "She received additional assistance after school 3 days a week. I now question the nature of those sessions." The school nurse had started collaborating with medical professionals to detect students potentially receiving unauthorized medication, although the complete scope was not yet known. Early information indicated that Ms. Winters had mainly focused on older students in the middle and high school levels, but several 5th graders were also involved in the situation as preliminary cases. Community leaders reacted swiftly. Councilmember Jenkins declared an emergency review of the district's performance metrics and funding formulas, and a local pharmaceutical company volunteered to sponsor drug awareness programs. Parent-teacher groups established support sessions to assist families in dealing with the disappointment. For Becca, observing the community's response evoked a range of feelings. The system that had placed pressure on Ms. Winters, despite the lack of justification for her reaction, largely remained unchanged. The same metrics, the same funding challenges, the same inequities would persist in schools such as Lincoln Elementary even after the scandal receded from public attention. How many more are there? Lieutenant Wilson mused, observing parents entering the auditorium. Educators who began with positive intentions but then violated boundaries they hadn't anticipated. The question remained unanswered, yet deeply troubling. The parking lot was dark and empty, the school long deserted, when Becca remained in her patrol car. Riker slept beside her, his duties for the day finished. His keen observation had uncovered a case that would probably extend far past Lincoln Elementary. She reached out to pet his fur, sensing his even breathing. "You did well today, partner," she whispered. "Really well." Riker opened one eye, responding to her praise with a quiet thump of his tail against the seat before returning to his rest. His absolute confidence in his abilities, his consistent focus on the job, were lessons Becca often thought about during her career. The radio was silent, the paperwork finished for now. During these calm moments between cases, doubt sometimes appeared. This isn't about Riker's capabilities, but rather about the systems they operated within, the complexities of human motivations, and the ambiguous situations their work often exposed. Ms. Winters wasn't a hardened criminal, at least not in the typical understanding of the term. She was an educator who had lost direction, who had eroded her ethical principles one incremental step at a time until she discovered herself on the opposite side of a boundary she'd previously considered inviolable. How many others existed, making comparable decisions, facing comparable pressures? Becca recalled her own difficulties as a new officer. The incentives to take shortcuts, to disregard issues for the perceived greater benefit. The pledge she'd made had steered her through those moments of uncertainty, just as Riker's training guided him through distractions and false trails. The contrast wasn't lost on her. An animal had demonstrated more defined ethical limits than a highly educated professional. Riker showed no interest in school budgets, performance metrics, or career advancement. His focus was on fulfilling the duties he's been trained for, cherishing the partnership they've cultivated, and upholding the straightforward distinction between right and wrong, a clarity humans frequently obscured with justifications. "Must be nice," Becca murmured, gently scratching behind his ears, observing his simplified view of the world. Their partnership had been established upon a foundation of trust, her faith in his instincts, his reliance on her guidance. Whenever confidence diminished, when personal reservations or political considerations or expediency became factors, the mission was compromised. The current day had emphatically underscored that understanding. Her phone vibrated with a message from Captain Reynolds. "Excellent work today. 5 additional arrests resulted from Winters' intelligence. This case will continue to broaden." Becca started the engine, glancing in her rearview mirror as Riker sat up, immediately vigilant. Despite the intricate challenges present in the continuing investigation, and regardless of the systemic shortcomings that had led to this circumstance, their course of action remained straightforward. Adhere to the evidence, rely on the training, safeguard those in need. Certain days, that straightforwardness proved sufficient. The morning sun reflected off the recently installed sign at Lincoln Elementary, proclaiming education through integrity. Principal Harrison stood beneath it, welcoming students with refreshed vigor as they entered the building for the spring semester. From their patrol car, Becca and Riker observed, having just finished their monthly visit, a new tradition that started unexpectedly. What had initially been a standard demonstration transformed into a recurring community engagement program, with Riker now quite well known among the students. A young girl with bright beads in her braids, Officer Becca, stepped away from the group, hurrying to meet them. "Is Riker coming to our class today?" Ms. Jimenez, the newly hired 4th grade teacher, smiled apologetically regarding her energetic student. "He certainly is," Becca confirmed, observing Riker's tail wagging a little at the acknowledgement. "However, recall our discussion. He's working, not playing," Zoe stated earnestly. "We are only allowed to pet him when you give permission." The investigation that commenced with Riker's alert had extended considerably beyond Lincoln Elementary. 17 educators throughout the district were ultimately involved in what the media called the achievement ring. This scandal resulted in the superintendent's resignation and a full revision of the district's performance evaluation metrics. Most significantly, it initiated a national discussion concerning the challenges confronting schools in underserved communities and the potentially harmful effects of funding exclusively based on standardized test scores. Ms. Winters had entered a guilty plea to several charges, including the distribution of controlled substances to minors, theft of test materials, and academic fraud. Her assistance resulted in a lessened sentence of 7 years, with a potential parole opportunity after 4, although her teaching career had concluded. Within the school, signs of transformation were apparent. The Testing Achievement Center had been renamed the Student Support Hub, now focusing on individualized learning assistance instead of test preparation. Parent volunteers managed a new after-school program. Funding from a grant provided by a local tech company supported comprehensive mental health services. "We're prioritizing genuine learning again," Principal Harrison said to Becca as they walked toward the assembly hall. "Test scores are important, but they don't represent the sole definition of success." The quarterly awards ceremony acknowledged progress in areas including academic growth, community service, and perseverance through challenges. The applause was thunderous as Becca and Riker were called to the stage. Officer Martinez and Riker conveyed an important lesson to the assembled students. Harrison stated, "Integrity isn't simply about adhering to rules, it's about acting ethically, even when facing challenges." While Riker performed a brief demonstration of his search skills, locating hidden training aids throughout the auditorium to the children's delight, Becca considered the changes initiated by One Alert Dog. Changes were underway, with priorities being reassessed and vulnerabilities being handled. Subsequently, as they got ready to depart, Lieutenant Wilson found them in the parking lot. "That press conference you gave last month gained national attention," he told her. "3 other districts have asked for our K-9 units to assess their testing facilities. They are referring to this as preventative measures." Becca acknowledged, observing Riker already concentrating on their next location. Prevention is always preferable to prosecution. As they drove away from Lincoln Elementary, Riker's head was held high in the passenger compartment. Becca felt a sense of completion. They hadn't just solved a crime, they'd helped set a community on a better path. Ultimately, that was what their partnership was truly about. Have you ever witnessed a working dog make an unexpected discovery, like Riker did? Their instincts often surpass our own understanding. Do you believe our education system places too much stress on teachers and students through standardized testing? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed Riker and Officer Martinez's story, please subscribe and enable notifications by clicking the bell icon to stay updated on our daily K-9 tales. Share this video with anyone who appreciates these incredible working dogs. Don't miss our previous stories, currently displayed on your screen. Until our next episode, see you tomorrow, same time, with another extraordinary K-9 hero story. A service dog barked continuously at a stroller in a busy mall. The mother became angry, security was summoned, and shoppers grew frustrated. But when the blanket was finally removed, what they witnessed moved the entire crowd to tears. Before we begin today's story, please leave a comment below indicating your location. And if you enjoy heartwarming stories about police dogs like this one, remember to subscribe. Prepare for what's about to unfold. The Westfield Shopping Center was filled with the usual weekend shopping activity. Families with strollers filled with bags, teenagers gathered around the food court, and a continuous blend of 1,000 conversations filled the space under the large glass ceiling. Afternoon sunlight shone through the skylights, creating warm areas on the polished tile floors as shoppers moved through the busy walkways between stores. Jessica Winters navigated the Saturday crowd with a practiced and efficient manner, her steps deliberate and measured. Beside her walked Echo, a Belgian Malinois wearing a professional red service vest with medical alert patches. Unlike the hurried shoppers who bumped shoulders and moved around each other, Echo moved with military precision, maintaining a perfect heel position despite the chaos, his attentive brown eyes occasionally glancing up at Jessica's face to check her status. "Excuse me, please," Jessica said as they moved past a group of teenagers who had stopped suddenly to take selfies in front of a clothing display. She kept her right hand lightly on Echo's specialized mobility harness, not because she required the physical support that day, but because the connection helped her feel stable amidst the overwhelming sights and sounds of the mall. The holiday decorations had already been put up, even though Thanksgiving was still 2 weeks away. Large silver and red decorations were suspended from the ceiling, and artificial pine garlands adorned the railings of the second-floor walkways. A faint piano version of Winter Wonderland played from afar, struggling to be heard over the noise of the crowd, the sounds of conversations, squeaking stroller wheels, and periodic announcements from the mall's public address system. Jessica glanced at her watch. It was 2:17 p.m. She had planned this trip carefully, arriving after the lunch rush but before the evening crowd descended. Her mental checklist was almost finished. New running shoes, the birthday gift for her niece, and one more stop at the bookstore to pick up the novel her book club was reading next. Then she could return to the quiet sanctuary of her apartment before the familiar tension in her shoulders escalated into a full-blown anxiety attack. Echo stayed calm and composed, his training clearly visible in his deliberate actions. He didn't behave like typical dogs who might investigate spilled food or react to appealing smells. Instead, he concentrated entirely on Jessica and any possible dangers to her safety. When a young child unexpectedly cried at a store called Toyland, Echo quickly assessed Jessica's response, prepared to offer deep pressure therapy should the noise upset her. Fortunately, this was a positive day. Jessica reacted with a slight flinch, then proceeded walking with a deep breath. The central court of the mall appeared before them, a circular space featuring a decorative fountain and benches for weary shoppers to rest. Jessica guided them toward the quieter path along the perimeter, avoiding the congested group of people observing a weekend product demonstration. Echo modified his speed seamlessly, guiding their path as though he and Jessica functioned as one unit within the crowd, their synchronicity stemming from countless hours of shared experience. Jessica had not always required Echo's presence. 5 years ago, she was Staff Sergeant Jessica Winters, a combat medic with the 4th Infantry Division, recognized for maintaining remarkable composure amidst the most severe mass casualty events. She had treated wounded soldiers under fire, stabilized blast injuries in helicopters, and once performed an emergency airway procedure during a sandstorm with almost zero visibility. Her commanding officers had described her as unshakable. Then occurred the roadside bomb outside Kandahar. Jessica had been the first to respond, treating 3 critically wounded soldiers while awaiting medevac. She had rescued all 3, but the 4th, her closest friend on the deployment, had died despite her desperate efforts. The consequences were stark: traumatic brain injury, shrapnel wounds to her left leg, and the unseen wounds of PTSD that ultimately proved more debilitating than her physical injuries. Returning to civilian life had become a minefield of triggers. Crowds, sudden noises, certain smells that instantly transported her back to the worst moments of her service. She explored therapy, medication, and support groups, but none provided complete relief until the VA's service dog program paired her with Echo 3 years ago. Echo was a unique service dog. This Belgian Malinois had been removed from a military working dog program, not due to a lack of skill, but because of his gentle nature, a characteristic that made him ideally suited for medical alert duties. His specialized training encompassed recognizing the minute biochemical alterations that foreshadow Jessica's panic attacks and seizures, a complication stemming from her TBI that occurred infrequently but posed a significant risk. He is observing your body chemistry, the trainer had clarified during their placement. Variations in your respiration, minuscule perspiration, and even alterations in your walk that you won't perceive deliberately. Echo will provide a warning before you are even aware of an issue. Their bond had developed past the boundaries of training. Echo possessed a remarkable skill in evaluating risks in Jessica's surroundings, differentiating between minor anxieties and real threats. He would position his body to shield Jessica from anything potentially triggering, whether approaching strangers or sudden movements, while largely remaining unnoticed during everyday interactions. Above all, Echo had restored Jessica's independence. Prior to this, she had rarely left her apartment, neglecting medical appointments and withdrawing from friends and family. Currently, She volunteers twice weekly at the VA hospital, has restarted her nursing education, and can navigate public spaces like this mall, still challenging but achievable with Echo's consistent support and alerting abilities. Many people didn't realize that beneath Echo's calm professional appearance lay a dog capable of detecting incredibly small chemical shifts, changes undetectable by human senses or medical instruments. His alert stemmed not only from excellent training, but also from a complex biological detection system combined with steadfast loyalty. Jessica directed Echo towards the central court fountain, intending to cross over to reach the bookstore on the opposite side. As they walked past a row of benches near the fountain, Echo's demeanor shifted, his ears pricked forward, his head lifted slightly higher, and his gait lost its fluid rhythm for a brief moment. Jessica noticed it instantly, having spent 3 years together. Even the slightest changes in Echo's behavior registered like alarm bells. "What is it, buddy?" she murmured, scanning the area for potential triggers. Echo's attention had fixed on something ahead and to their right. Jessica's attention followed his gaze to a navy blue stroller situated next to a bench. A woman, seemingly in her 30s and with dark hair styled in a loose bun, was organizing shopping bags nearby. The baby in the stroller seemed to be sleeping calmly under a thin blanket featuring cartoon elephants. Jessica softly adjusted Echo's harness, trying to get his attention. "Come on, focus." However, instead of following her instruction, Echo's body became even more rigid. A soft whine came from him, a sound Jessica had seldom heard from her well-trained service dog. Echo moved closer to the stroller, abandoning his heel position for the first time in public that Jessica could recall. "Echo, heel," Jessica instructed more sternly, feeling a blush rise on her cheeks as a nearby elderly couple looked in their direction. Service dogs were meant to be unobtrusive in public spaces. That was the expectation. Echo had never deviated from protocol in this way before. The dog obeyed with evident hesitation, returning to her side while still watching the stroller. After 3 more steps, Echo stopped abruptly, firmly placing his feet and declining to budge from the stroller's line of sight. "Is something the matter with your dog?" the mother inquired, observing Echo's focused attention. Her voice carried a trace of irritation as she looked between her shopping bags and the service dog. "I'm sorry," Jessica started, but Echo interrupted her apology with a quick, forceful bark that resonated across the central court. People shopping turned towards the sound, their faces showing a mix of curiosity and disapproval. "Control your dog, please," the mother stated, her annoyance now clear. "You're frightening my baby." However, the baby hadn't moved at the loud bark, a detail that Jessica's training immediately recognized as odd. Typically, sleeping infants would react with a start to such a sound. Echo barked once more, then again, his barks becoming increasingly urgent. It wasn't aggression. Jessica understood Echo's behaviors completely. It was an alert, mirroring the pattern he exhibited when sensing a potential medical crisis. "Ma'am, I believe," Jessica began, but the mother interrupted her. "Service dogs shouldn't bark in public," the woman retorted, rising and moving defensively toward her stroller. "You need to leave." 2 mall security guards, both wearing navy blue uniforms, moved towards the disturbance. The taller guard, a middle-aged man with salt and pepper hair, and a name tag identifying him as Wilson, spoke to Jessica. "Ma'am, we've received reports of your dog causing a disturbance for shoppers. Is everything all right?" Echo continued to bark, pulling towards the stroller with unusual focus. Jessica felt as though many people were watching her, judging, and presuming she lacked control over her service dog. The demands to apologize and depart were intense, yet Echo's actions conveyed a contrasting message, one that years of collaboration had shown her to be reliable in interpreting. "My service dog is medically trained," Jessica stated, working to maintain a composed tone. "He is specifically alerting to something concerning regarding that baby. This isn't typical behavior for him." The second security guard, a younger woman with her hair pulled back in a tight ponytail, approached the mother. "Ma'am, would you please check on your child, just to be cautious?" "This is absurd," the mother protested. "She's fine. Simply taking her afternoon nap. I'm only shopping for less than an hour." Wilson frowned, visibly uneasy with the circumstances. Ma'am, he addressed Jessica, service animals are not permitted to be disruptive in public spaces. Mall policy dictates that. I'm aware of mall policy, Jessica responded, her voice revealing the influence of her military training. Echo wasn't issuing this alert arbitrarily. He was detecting a medically significant issue. Echo had now activated his complete medical alert sequence, sitting stiffly, vocalizing with a characteristic 3 barks, then pawing the ground. This was the same pattern he exhibited when identifying Jessica's rare seizures in advance, a behavior that had prevented serious injury on multiple occasions. Look, Jessica stated, referencing her medical experience, I served as a combat medic. Echo is programmed to recognize specific medical crises. There's an issue with that baby, and each moment we spend debating could be critical. Jessica initially encountered Echo on a rainy Tuesday at the Patriot Service Dogs Training Center in Colorado, recently completing intensive therapy and still using a cane for her left leg. She initially doubted a dog could achieve what medication and counseling had not. Instead of the warm welcome Jessica anticipated, Echo approached her cautiously, deliberately sniffing her hands, her legs, and her breath. He then settled directly in front of her, his eyes fixed on her face as if committing every detail to memory. The turning point in their partnership occurred 3 months into their training. Their initial period had presented difficulties. Jessica's fluctuating symptoms required Echo to identify patterns that even medical devices sometimes failed to detect. The team utilized scent samples gathered during Jessica's pre-seizure states, anxiety attacks, and normal days to train Echo to distinguish between them. Subsequently, one evening, while Jessica was having coffee with her roommate, Echo abruptly initiated his alert behavior, remaining rigid, emitting 3 distinct barks, then pawing the ground. Jessica felt well and initially attributed it to a training mistake. Echo, settle, she commanded. Instead of following instructions, Echo had turned to her roommate, Diane, repeating the alert pattern with increasing urgency. Maybe he needs to go out? Diane suggested, rising. She had taken 2 steps when she collapsed to the floor. Paramedics later confirmed she had experienced a dangerous blood sugar crash that could have resulted in a coma if she had been alone. Echo hadn't been alerting for Jessica at all. He recognized Diane's declining glucose levels, a condition she hadn't received a diagnosis for at that time. Following that day, Jessica's faith in Echo became unwavering. Whenever he provided an alert, she responded, irrespective of whether she experienced any symptoms herself. That established history of trust is what provided Jessica with the assurance to maintain her position now. Although met with skeptical looks and the mother's initial hesitation, Echo had gained her confidence through demonstrated dependability, and she was committed to supporting his warning, regardless of any awkwardness. A small group of people had assembled, whispering amongst themselves. An older woman approached. Perhaps you should examine the baby, dear. It's better to be cautious. The mother's certainty lessened a little as she looked at her child, who remained perfectly still. She claimed to be a deep sleeper, but a note of doubt entered her voice. Your baby hasn't reacted to any sounds, Jessica remarked gently. Not even a flinch at Echo's barking. That wasn't typical behavior for an infant. The mother's face changed as she processed this. She turned to the stroller, her shoulders showing strain. Please, please, Jessica said, her voice becoming more gentle. Echo has never been incorrect about a medical alert. Not in 3 years. My concern for your daughter prompted my request. The security guards looked at each other, appearing uncertain about the appropriate procedure for this uncommon circumstance. Wilson approached the stroller. Ma'am, may we briefly examine the situation? He asked. Then everyone can resume their activities. The mother paused, then agreed, moving towards the stroller. Very well. I'll demonstrate that she is simply sleeping, and then I anticipate an apology. Jessica remained behind, ensuring Echo stayed calm as the mother bent over the stroller and carefully pulled back the blanket with the elephant design. The woman's annoyed look quickly changed, and color left her face. Madison, she said, her voice growing louder. When the baby didn't react, she touched her daughter's cheek. Madison, wake up, baby. The security guard stepped forward instantly as the mother's voice rose to panic. She's not waking up. Tears streamed down her face as she desperately unfastened the stroller's buckles. "If something's wrong, please help." Wilson quickly radioed for medical help, and his partner assisted the mother in lifting the unresponsive infant from the stroller. The baby's lips were slightly bluish, and while her chest rose with shallow breaths, she didn't respond to her mother's increasingly frantic efforts to rouse her. "I'm a former combat medic," Jessica stated, stepping forward with composure. "Can I assist while we await medical personnel?" The mother nodded vigorously, tears running down her face as Jessica drew near. Echo remained calm, his earlier urgent alerting now replaced by watchful observation. Jessica assessed the baby's vital signs with practiced skill. "She is breathing, but it's shallow. Pulse is detectable but weak." Jessica turned to the mother. "Has Madison been unwell recently? Are there any existing medical concerns?" "No, nothing," the mother responded, stammering. During her routine checkup last week, everything was perfect. She simply fell asleep while shopping. An older man then approached from the assembled group. "I'm Dr. Brenner, a pediatrician," he stated. "May I examine her?" With the mother's consent, the doctor rapidly assessed the infant. "Pupils are responsive but sluggish," he observed. "Temperature appears normal." He turned to Jessica and spoke softly. "This looks neurological. How long has she been unresponsive?" "I don't know," the mother cried. "She fell asleep approximately 40 minutes ago. She typically sleeps soundly during shopping trips." The movement of the stroller. Her voice faltered as the realization struck her. "Oh God, has she been like this the entire time? I believed she was simply sleeping." Mall medical staff arrived with a first aid kit and oxygen. Shortly after, paramedics navigated the crowd with a gurney and pediatric medical equipment. Service dogs signaled to the baby. Dr. Brenner briefed the paramedics. "The infant is unresponsive, but breathing. Possible neurological event is suspected." As the paramedics commenced their assessment, the lead EMT observed Echo, a Belgian Malinois medical alert dog. These dogs are remarkable scent detectors. Last year, we had one alert to a carbon monoxide victim who exhibited no visible symptoms. "Their olfactory capabilities are extraordinary," Dr. Brenner stated, watching Echo with renewed respect. "Certain studies indicate they can identify molecular changes at concentrations as low as parts per trillion. Finding it is comparable to locating a single drop of blood within 20 Olympic swimming pools." The medical uses are still being explored, especially for illnesses where early diagnosis significantly enhances results. Ramirez nodded as he secured a pulse oximeter to Madison's small finger. He had observed dogs detecting seizures prior to clinical signs, identifying malignancies before scans could, and even forecasting cardiac events. "This little one is lucky that you and your partner were present today." Amber Parker, holding her daughter's hand, whispered, "Your dog knew. How could he possibly know when I didn't?" The paramedics responded with practice speed, securing the infant to the pediatric backboard and connecting monitoring devices. Paramedic Ramirez examined the readings, his expression concerned. "Oxygen saturation is lower than I'd like," he observed, placing a small oxygen mask over Madison's face. "These readings indicate potential seizure activity, though without convulsions. We are considering the possibility of absent seizures or a postictal state." "What does that mean? Will she be all right?" Amber asked, holding her daughter's hand. "We need to transfer her to Children's Hospital for a definitive diagnosis," Ramirez stated. "Fortunately, we are identifying this early, preventing potential oxygen deprivation that could cause harm." While a female paramedic was rechecking Madison's vital signs, she paused, moving closer to observe something. "Ms. Parker, has Madison received any medications recently?" the paramedic inquired. "No, none," Amber replied. "She has never taken medication." The paramedic indicated faint markings on the inner side of Madison's elbow. "These appear to be injection sites, but they are very small, the type we sometimes see with specific medical tests." Amber stated, with evident confusion, that the only injection her child had received was for routine vaccinations during the checkup last week. Dr. Brenner examined the marks and frowned. He noted that these were more recent than a week ago and did not align with typical vaccination injections. Echo immediately became alert, focusing intently on the diaper bag hanging from the stroller handle. Jessica recognized this particular behavior. Echo had identified something significant. "Ma'am," Jessica said cautiously, "would you mind if we examined Madison's diaper bag?" Echo is signaling something within. Amber agreed promptly. Any prior doubts disappeared. Naturally, anything that could assist. Security Officer Wilson took the bag, and Jessica directed Echo through a methodical scent examination. The dog quickly pinpointed a side pocket, persistently nudging it with his nose, employing the method he uses for identifying substances. Within the pocket, a small medicine bottle was discovered, labeled as infant acetaminophen, though the security seal was broken and the bottle was only half full. "I didn't place that there," Amber stated, her face growing paler. "That's not our brand, and Madison hasn't required any pain medication." Ramirez carefully placed the bottle in an evidence bag. "We'll have this analyzed at the hospital. It's possible it contains another substance or has been altered." The second paramedic spoke with urgency. "Madison's oxygen levels are decreasing. Immediate transport is required." As preparations began to move Madison, Echo whimpered gently and rested his head against Jessica's leg. This was his way of indicating that his task was complete. He had identified the underlying issue well before human observation of the symptoms, potentially averting a significantly more severe outcome. "Your dog is remarkable," Dr. Brenner told Jessica as the paramedics began moving the gurney. "For 30 years, I have worked in pediatrics, and I observed no outward signs of distress in that child." Yet, he recognized the situation instantly. Amber, accompanying the gurney, glanced back at Jessica. "Thank you," she said, tears flowing down her face. "I'm so sorry I didn't believe you. If you hadn't insisted." She was unable to complete the sentence. "Thank Echo," Jessica responded quietly. "He is the hero here." The Central Court had been converted into a temporary command center. Police officers arrived soon after Madison was transported, establishing a perimeter around the stroller. A bottle from the diaper bag was now considered evidence in what the lead detective described as a possible instance of intentional drugging. Echo remained composed beside Jessica as she provided her statement to Detective Portman, a woman with a serious expression and kind eyes who documented every aspect of Echo's warning actions with considerable interest. According to Portman, the dog identified a problem with the child prior to any outward signs of illness. Jessica corroborated this, confirming that Echo possesses specialized scent detection training for medical emergencies. He is capable of identifying chemical alterations within the body that signify specific medical occurrences. Jessica further stated that Echo specifically indicated the diaper bag after the child received treatment. She explained that he exhibits distinct alert patterns depending on the circumstances. His actions concerning the bag indicate he perceived a substance present, rather than solely a medical issue. Portman added another notation. Ms. Parker stated the baby had a checkup last week. We are investigating who may have accessed the child or her belongings since that time. Wilson arrived accompanied by the mall manager, a tense woman wearing a charcoal suit, who identified herself as Diane Reynolds. "Ms. Winters," Reynolds stated, "I want to express my sincere gratitude to you and your service dog for your actions today. Our security team will be reviewing our protocols concerning service animal alerts." She looked at Wilson, who appeared suitably concerned. "We recognize there are some areas where we need to improve our training." Echo was simply performing his trained tasks, Jessica responded. Wilson added, "The hospital contacted us with an update. The baby is showing signs of stabilization. Medical tests were underway, but the doctor mentioned that a further delay in treatment could have had serious consequences," then stopped speaking, leaving the meaning unstated. A young woman who had been shopping in the vicinity approached cautiously. "I filmed what occurred using my phone," she stated. "I didn't mean to be odd, but my brother is applying to service dog programs, and I wish to demonstrate how they function in public settings." She then asked if the footage would be beneficial to the police. Detective Portman promptly collected the woman's contact details. "That could be extremely valuable evidence, thank you." As the crowd gradually dispersed, an elderly man approached Jessica. "Young lady, I want you to know I've contacted the local news. People need to hear about this. Not just about the unfortunate situation with the baby, but about the incredible work service dogs like yours perform. Jessica experienced a moment of worry regarding potential media coverage, but Echo instinctively leaned against her leg, offering the calming pressure that helped manage her nervous system. She inhaled deeply, concentrating on the most important aspects. Madison was undergoing treatment, an inquiry was in progress, and Echo had performed as he was trained. The police concluded securing the area while Jessica and Echo were readying to depart. Officer Wilson approached them at the mall entrance. He offered a sincere apology to both of us. 20 years in security and I've never seen anything like what your dog did today, he said. If we'd followed protocol and asked you to leave, he shook his head, expressing gratitude for your resolve. As Jessica and Echo walked through the parking lot toward her car, the adrenaline from the incident began to fade, leaving her physically drained but mentally clear. She stopped beside her SUV, kneeling down to bring herself eye level with her partner. You did good, buddy, she whispered, gently stroking Echo's face and neck. Really good. Echo's perceptive eyes stayed focused on hers, his expression reflecting complete satisfaction now that his task was finished. He moved closer, touching his forehead against Jessica's in the familiar gesture they frequently shared following challenging situations. Jessica reflected on how she almost questioned Echo due to societal expectations, the looks, the security personnel, the mother's initial displeasure. Apologizing and leaving would have been simpler, attributing Echo's behavior to a temporary lapse. The pressure of public opinion had nearly eclipsed years of collaboration and mutual trust, but Echo remained unwavering, continuing until someone acknowledged his perspective. His conviction prevented a child from a situation paramedics believed could have been intentional drugging. The realization sent a shiver down Jessica's spine, even under the warmth of the afternoon sun. As Jessica started the engine, a text from her VA counselor appeared on her phone. It referenced the news alert about a service dog saving a baby at Westfield. Could that have been Echo and her? The counselor suggested she call if she needed support following the event. News spread rapidly. By tomorrow, reporters would likely be calling, potentially requesting interviews. Ordinarily, this would cause a surge of anxiety, but surprisingly, it felt different this time. Sharing their experiences might help people recognize the crucial role service dogs play, not only in assisting their handlers, but also in safeguarding the broader community. Echo relaxed into his seat, his alert stance softening into a calm watchfulness, ever prepared but no longer sensing immediate threats. Jessica met his look in the rearview mirror, feeling a wave of thankfulness for this remarkable animal who had profoundly changed her life and now had protected someone else. Believe in your dog. This was the initial instruction in service dog training, the basis for all subsequent commands. Recent events had demonstrated why this belief wasn't merely training protocol, but significant insight. Occasionally, a companion could detect things beyond human perception and human assessment. Occasionally, trust meant the difference between a disaster and a fortunate outcome. Have you ever observed an instance where an animal detected something humans entirely overlooked? What accounts for some animals' remarkable ability to sense medical emergencies even before symptoms are apparent? Would you have believed a service dog's alert regarding a stranger's baby, despite the potential for embarrassment? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories of heroic service animals. Click the bell icon to receive notifications when we upload new videos each week. Please share this video with friends and family who value the special connection between people and their service animals. Watch our previous stories about canine heroes now, and tune in tomorrow at the same time for another inspiring story you won't want to miss.